In the last 24 hours, moving on, two major polls have attempted to paint a picture of the nation's political pendulum. And like your grandfather clock, it's swinging. First, TVNZ's One News Variant poll had the Right Bloc and National Act New Zealand First keeping the coalition ticking. But the next morning, a RNZ Reid research poll showed the opposite. The left is out in front. As tempted as I am to reach for the shrug emoji, let's see what our panel makes of this. Maria, what are we supposed to do with this? What's your take?
I thought it was interesting. On Morning Report this morning, they were talking about how these two polls are sort of close but in the opposite ways. And they do, it's only 1,000 people, so they do fall into the margin of error, basically. I think the message is it could go either way at the moment. For me, actually, what the most interesting number that came out of the RNZ poll was the pay equity survey. 43% of people saying they were opposed to what the government had done and only 25% in favour, and 68% saying they should have consulted. I think that is the most egregious bit about that whole thing, that it was just rushed through under urgency. It was really cynical. And I do believe that's starting to, bite them a wee bit, particularly perhaps amongst women voters that just see this as really kind of mean.
I can recall Heather Roy on the panel go on saying, actually, whatever she thinks about it, she disagreed with it not going through select committee process.
Yeah, well, that's the point too, wasn't it? Because it was rammed through under urgency, which, as listeners will probably know, means no select committee process, no consultations, no submissions. And so process-wise, there are a lot of criticisms to be had there. So that probably one of the big sort of black marks that people have against this. In terms of the polls, I mean, yep. They were kind of different results, if you like, but there's not a lot in it, is there? Not a lot of difference in there. And to me, the big number that sticks out is just how low National is, frankly. I mean, most parties as a dominant party in a coalition government, if you look back at an Ardern or a Key or a Clark, I mean, those leaders had their parties over 50% for years. So to see the leading government party so low in the polls in the early 30s is quite extraordinary to me. And, it really, to me, shows that New Zealand First and ACT are really making a lot of the running, and Luxon and National are struggling to put their own sort of stamp on the narrative of the government. And to me, to be in the low 30s as the dominant party, that's really problematic in my view.
And yet, as Maria says, we've had things like the pay equity hugely unpopular. It's not that bad, is it, after that?
Well,
it's not that bad.
Well, I suppose it could have been worse, but they aren't great numbers. No. The pay equity thing again was a National ACT thing. So these are things that ACT has wanted. It does appear that National sort of is getting the bruising from a lot of the things that the minor parties are wanting to push through.
I want to know, as a political commentator, as a lecturer, as an analyst, what store do we take in polls? I can recall you coming on several times and actually going, polls, don't worry about them. What's your take now?
Well, I think we have to not pay too much attention to a single poll. And what I find is useful about the polls, however, is to look at the trend. And one thing we can clearly say, as Guyon just pointed out, is that National, for a sitting governing party in its first term, is doing rather poorly. And that's been the case from the moment that they hit the ground as a government. And so that is a real worry for National. But yeah, we have these two polls at the moment, recent polls, that appear to say opposite things. One, that there'd be a change of government, and the other, that there wouldn't be. But I would say, as Maria pointed out, yes, there's error variance in any polling, and we just have to accept that there's always going to be a bit of wobbling around. And we're still quite a long way from the election, so don't go reading tea leaves.